It was a thing where I didn't want to end up out there on Figueroa again. I didn't want to end up, watching another person being dragged out of the house, and drugged to the alley because they had overdosed and people didn't want to stop and put their drugs down to call the police. Didn't nobody want to leave. And these are the things that I saw. I seen people set on fire, and you know, I just didn't want to live that life anymore. I seen drive-bys. I seen women needlessly just physically abused. I mean, I was physically abused needlessly, and these are the things that I took myself through, and I didn't want to have to go through that again. I kept that right in front of me, and I remember it on a daily basis, when these little things start working on me about, well, it sure would be nice to just go get one.
This is The Bottom Line. I'm Gary Thiemann in Los Angeles. Just a few harmless sips of champagne at a family gathering wouldn't be a big deal to most families, unless, of course, one member happened to be prone to alcoholism. This is a story of experience, strength, and hope. Here's Janice's story.
My name is Janice, and I'm an alcoholic. I was born in Los Angeles, July the 17th, 1964. From what I can remember as a young child, I always felt less than, or like I didn't fit in. I was raised by my grandparents and my aunt because my parents were very young when they had me, or my mother. And therefore, she wasn't a very responsible person. So my grandparents and my aunt took on the challenge of raising me, and I might add they did a pretty good job. I can remember from an early age we always had big dinners, and a lot of people from the church would come over, and we always had big Thanksgiving dinners, and the family would come over, and Christmas dinners. And on these occasions, we would always have champagne. And I guess my grandparents and, aunt didn't think that it was a big deal that I had a little bit of champagne, a sip or two here or there, at these dinners. But I can remember one time in particular when I was about 7 or 8 years old. I got this really warm feeling behind drinking the champagne, and it kind of made me feel tingly and good inside, And I got to running around the house, I can remember, and shaking my head from side to side, and I just felt like I could just do a little bit of anything, in the champagne. So what I proceeded to do was go around and pick up people's cups when they weren't looking, and drink their champagne. Well, not the whole cup, but enough to the point where they wouldn't notice it. But as I noticed people started to feel like I was feeling, then it got to the point where I really didn't care how, after I had drank so much, I really didn't care how much of their drink I was drinking, so I just kept on drinking. And by the end of the evening, I was in the bathroom throwing up, holding the toilet seat, and of course, my grandparents thought that it was just I had eaten too much food, and this is what I let them think. And my aunt used to keep beer and alcohol for people in the house. Now, these were church-going people, so they never drank, except for on these special occasions, but I had friends, and they were drinking, and I was of peer pressure age, and after going over to their house and experiencing drinking, and just not enough to where when I got back home anybody would know about it, but just drinking and then wanting to go back over their house so that I could get that feeling again, I proceeded to go into the closet and start sneaking beers and drinking them in my room and hiding the bottles under my bed, and turning the six-pack in the other direction so they opened the closet, they wouldn't see that two were missing. And Then one day it just got to the point where I didn't care, and I just took the whole six pack, and I just figured, they probably forgot that it was even up here. And my aunt, she had alcohol upstairs, so I never really was much for going up to her house, but when I found out she had alcohol, that was the place to be. So I would go up there, and what I would do is I'd tell her that I was going to clean up her place while she was gone, and she'd leave and go take care of her business, whatever it was she had to do, to the bank or grocery store or whatever. And while she was gone, I'd go and pour me a whole glass of alcohol and proceed to fill her bottles back up with water. Now, this was very easy to do, especially with the brown bottles or the green bottles, because she could never tell, she could never really tell. And then, like I said, these weren't drinking people, so it wasn't like she was going to go and pour some alcohol as soon as she walked back in the house and said, Janice, there's water in here. But I do remember on an occasion she did have some people over, and she poured some she poured some alcohol for a couple of people, and there was basically nothing but water in these bottles. And I think that was at the point where they started kind of starting to wonder. They didn't pinpoint it, but they started kind of wondering, and it was always so much easier on me because we had other people, like my father and other people that drank. So it was easier for her to point the finger at them than to put it on me. Of course, not me. I wouldn't do anything like that. So as I got a little bit older and this progressed, it went from alcohol to smoking cigarettes, and then from smoking cigarettes to smoking weed. And this, I should say, I was about 11 or 12. And I guess you could say my first drink was when I was about 8 years old, between 7 and 8, somewhere in there. And I really liked the way it made me feel. But as I was saying, it just got progressively worse, and I went from weed to more alcohol and bigger quantities of alcohol. I mean, by the time I was 13, I was drinking 40 ounces and smoking a dime bag of weed. And I was the type of child that was overly developed. So at like 14 and 15, I was getting into spots where you were required to be 18 and older. And had a little bit of fake ID and a little bit of makeup and my hair down, I had no problem. And I was always mature than the girls that were my age, so I never wanted to hang out with them. And I guess I just felt different from them. I just wanted to be older, and I wanted to fit in. And with the girls that were older than I was, I felt like I could fit in because they were doing the things that I wanted to do. The girls that were my age, I didn't want to do the things that they were doing. They were going to malls and hanging out with the little boys down the street, and that just didn't interest me. What interests me was excitement, dangerous living, drugs and alcohol. That's what excited me, and that's what I got into. And progressively, it just got worse and worse. I went from, at the age of 13, 40 ounces in a dime bag of weed to 15 and 16 snorting cocaine and doing mollies. I remember I graduated from high school at the age of 15. I graduated a year early because I went to parochial school during the time living with my grandparents. And while I was in high school, I was selling mollies and I was popping 5 and 6 mollies a day. I was going to sleep on them. I was eating on them, and I was, snorting cocaine. I mean, just to the point where my nose would be just so froze, I didn't know it was on my face. My sinus cavities, I couldn't even feel them. I could put my hands on my cheeks, and I could not feel my cheeks. It just, except for knowing that my fingers were there, that was it. It got to a point once where I could barely close my eyes because I had just, done so much coke. And from that point, it still got worse. I went into acid, and then I wanted to live the dangerous life, of coming in at 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning. I got really rebellious. I ran away from home and went to live with my aunt, who was, a drug addict. And I just love the excitement. I just had to have drama going on in my life. It was just a necessity. And I love the action that went along with it. And from that point, I think that I felt there was nothing that really I couldn't do. I used to ditch school, and I'd smoke PCP. And I remember one experience of smoking PCP and going from one room to the next room and not even knowing how I got there. I remember I ditched school one day and we went to the beach, and I was smoking angel dust, and I was just whistling, walking right on out into the ocean, fully dressed, and some friends pulled me back out of the water. I was on my way to killing myself and didn't even know it, didn't even know it. And that's just how out of control I was. And I mean, there are a few drugs that I did not use, but I was just a garbage can addict, Whatever you had, I wanted to try it, and I didn't feel like there was any reason why I couldn't try it. And if I liked it, I would keep doing it. I'd try it a second time and I'd keep doing it, and but it turned out to be that alcohol and cocaine ended up being my real drugs of choice. But I say alcohol because before I will go to the dope house and buy drugs, I'll go to the liquor store first and get alcohol, because I like, go down. I like that feeling of going down. And then when I start feeling like I'm about to get out of control, and I don't like to be on drugs that have me totally just out of control, where I can't be in control of what's going on around me. I'd go and get some cocaine so that I could come back up and be fully aware of what was going on around me, But eventually that played out too, because then paranoia sets in, and not even alcohol can, bring you down from that paranoia stage, especially after you've been up for like 2 and 3 days, 4 or 5 days at a time. You start out on a Monday, and when you come to your senses, it's like Saturday. And it's like a dream world. You wonder where you've been or what you've been doing. And it just got wild. It took me down. It took me so far as to Figueroa, which is a stroll, what they call here in LA, where the prostitutes hang out. And I wouldn't go and hang out with the prostitutes, because I knew as soon as they turned a trick, and I was befriended them, that I would, get my propers too. And this is what I proceeded to do. Only you can only befriend somebody for so long before, they consider you a freeloader. So, I had to start pulling my end of the load too. And I'd like to be able to say that, I've never slept with anybody for drugs, but I can't sit here and tell that, because, I have, and I did. And it's not something that I'm proud of, but it just went along with the territory. Because, like I said, I was into that excitement. I really liked that dangerous life, and there were certain aspects of it I didn't like, and that was one of the aspects I didn't like, but I liked getting the drug, and it wasn't so much that, people would bring the drug to you or it would be there. Somehow I think the excitement came in the chase, the chase of getting the drug. I guess it's like with a heroin user, it's not so much just the fact of shooting the heroin, it's just the fact of fixing the needle and spooning it up, and the whole process that goes along with it. You're attracted to it, and you get used to doing it. So basically that is where my drug usage took me, and it took me all the way down. I can remember starting out at maybe 100 35, 40 pounds and being like 124 when I came off the streets, and looking like a sunken skeleton, because that's who I was and that's what I was. And I didn't think anything was wrong with me. You couldn't tell me there was anything wrong with me. I thought I looked perfectly fine.
There are many different roads to recovery. For Janice, she calls it the Thorazine Shuffle. That's a hospital treatment program that gave her the tools necessary for the start of her recovery.
2 days after I was rescued off of Figueroa, my mother came and got me. I called her and I told her I was tired. And for once, she didn't argue with me. She just came and got me. And I went to her house and I laid on her couch and I was sick as a dog and I was sweating and I was throwing up and I was detoxing. That's what I was doing. I was just a mess. You know, I felt like my head was just going to split open at any time. Every part of my body ached. I was just racked with pain. And somewhere in between those 2 days, I got so sick until I couldn't get up and leave from one room, which was only like about 5 to 10 feet, to go to the restroom without getting dizzy. I would have to hold on to the walls just to get to the bathroom. I couldn't keep anything on my stomach. I couldn't even drink liquids. I mean, getting some water down was a job. I couldn't keep aspirin in my stomach. I couldn't do anything. So she took me to the hospital, and I went to the VA hospital in Brentwood. And at that time, they knew immediately when I got there I had a drug problem. I mean, you could see I had a drug problem a mile away. You know, it was no problem to see that I had a drug problem. And so they suggested that I take a psych evaluation, and so that they could put me into their program that they have. Now, I must be a sick individual because they didn't send me. Now, there's one side of the hospital where they treat you for illnesses of the body and so forth and so on, and that's the part where the hospital sits. But then there's the other part where they have people behind locked doors and people doing the Thorazine Shuffle. And that's where they sent me, you know. And so I have a serious mental problem at the same time, obviously, because I didn't get a chance to go to the Betty Ford Clinic. They sent me over to the insane part of Wadsworth, you know. And the program that I was in, I wasn't on lockdown or anything of that sort. I was able to move freely across the grounds, but it was a somewhat intensive program for 30 days. And some people require a little bit more, but for me, it was enough. For me, it was enough for me to get in touch with where my sickness really lied, and that was inside of my head. I wouldn't wish what I went through on anyone, not even my worst enemy. I wouldn't wish it on. But some people have to go through what they have to go through. And I realized that today. And I believe that God never turned his back on me. I believe that I turned my back on him. But there's a little prayer and a poem that it's called Footsteps. And I truly do believe that the time that I was out there walking the streets and doing the things that I was doing, he was carrying me.
We open our hearts to be filled by you, till we're overflowing with your love. Our only desire is to be more like you, so up my mind to serve you, Lord. I'll give my life to you. This time I made up my mind to serve you. I'll recommit my life back to you. We will serve you. We will serve you. We'll serve you, Lord, only you. This time I made up my mind to serve you. We will serve you. Now I can see what you want from me. Made up my mind to serve you. Now I really wanna serve you. Oh, this time made up my mind, Lord. Oh Lord, I'll recommit my life back to you.
You've been listening to The Bottom Line featuring Janice's story. Janice, what a beautiful story. Thanks so much for sharing your experience, strength, and hope. This show is produced for Armed Forces Radio. I'm Gary Thiemann. Until next time, God bless you. And share the message, won't you? This has been a GRT production.